हम अहले सफा मरदूदे हरम आ मसनद पे बिठाए जाएंगे.
This video of some students from the Indian Institute of Mass Communication is one of the many instances of Faiz Ahmed Faiz's Hum Dekhenge being sung in protest against the forces of tyranny and oppression, whether it be against dictatorship, human rights violations, or the patriarchy. The poem has developed a cult following in leftist circles owing to its powerful and visceral lyrics, penned by one of the greatest Urdu poets of all time and aimed at military dictator Ziaul Haq, who took rule of Pakistan from 1977 to 1988. That said, an important event that exploded the poem's popularity was its rendition by Iqbal Bano, a close friend of Faiz and a prominent Urdu ghazal singer. In 1986, 2 years after Faiz's passing, she performed this banned poem at Lahore's Al Hamra Art Council, whilst reportedly being clad in a sari, an item of clothing that was also banned by Zia as a result of his Islamization policies. I'll be talking about the importance of Hum Dekhenge in a threefold manner by highlighting the significance of the poem, the performance, and the recording of the performance. Let's begin. Hum Dekhenge was penned in 1979, right before Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the leader of the left from center Pakistan's People Party and the country's ex-prime minister, was to be hanged under General Zia's orders. Alongside this, it is claimed that Faiz also had in mind the Iranian people, who were struggling against a dictatorial monarchy in their own country at the time of the poem's writing. Keeping in mind Zia's repressive Islamization policies, it is interesting that the lyrics speak of the day of revolution using apocalyptic imagery, reflecting Quranic passages that speak of the day of judgment. This can be seen, for instance, in the lines जब जुल्मो सितम के कोहे गिरां रुई की तरह उड़ जाएंगे, which translates to when the large mountains of oppression and tyranny blow away like wool. This is a direct reference to a Quranic verse that claims, on that day, meaning the day of judgment, the sky will be like molten brass and the mountains like tufts of wool. Elsewhere in the poem too, religious imagery interweaves with powerful visions of a people's revolution. The masses, for instance, are referred to as Khalq-e-Khuda, or the creations of God, and the tyrants are symbolized as stone idols that will be removed from the Kaaba. The Kaaba here does not necessarily mean the literal Kaaba in Makkah, but more likely alludes to the earth as a whole. Also, this image of stone idols being removed references the story of the Prophet Muhammad breaking the old statues in the Kaaba and reclaiming it for the Muslims. Nowhere else in the poem, in my opinion, is it more clear that Faiz meant for Hum Dekhenge to specifically point out the godlessness of Islamic dictators than with the following verse, Uthega nal haq ka nara, jo main bhi hoon aur tum bhi ho, or I am the truth will be the chant, which I am and you are too. It is noteworthy that the phrase Nal Haq ties in with the famous tale of Sufi Mansur al-Hajjaj's execution. As the story goes, al-Hajjaj's chants of Nal Haq were meant to profess a total annihilation of self, but were misinterpreted as blasphemy, and he was hanged. Faiz may have been trying to make a similar claim, that the country did not need to be made more Islamic. Zia just had a very narrow and self-serving interpretation of what an Islamic state could be. The years before Faiz's death, from 1978 to 1983, were mostly spent abroad due to crackdowns and arrests of leftists countrywide. He returned to Pakistan a few months before his passing in 1984 and is buried in Lahore as per his wishes. In 1986, Iqbal Bano performed a few songs at Faiz Mela, an annual festival held to honor Faiz's legacy, to a packed crowd including a large number of political activists and workers. Hum Dekhenge was not part of the set, but was added as an encore after audiences begged Bano to perform one last song. Part of what makes the performance in of itself so important is the story behind it. Just as the poem speaks of resisting oppression, the entire performance was also an act of defiance. As I mentioned at the start of this video, not only was the poem and such gatherings banned, but Iqbal Bano reportedly showed up in a sari, which was a banned article of clothing. It is important to note, however, that the most accurate account that we have of this story comes from Fez's grandson, Ali Madi Hashmi, and his version of the story does not specify the sari part. Furthermore, it is the communal element in the performance that makes it so special, in my opinion. The original hall was supposed to hold about 400 to 600 people, but right before Bano began playing Hum Dekhenge, thousands of political activists and workers who were standing outside were let in. The auditorium was so packed that when the audience clapped, it felt like, quote unquote, the roof would blow off. At no point was the audience shushed. The music would alter and adapt if their clapping and chanting got too loud, and the line between the artists and the audience became blurred. I will talk about this in a bit more detail in the next section. Before that, it is important to also highlight how this performance was personally important for Bano too. According to Fez's daughter Sulima Hashmi, Bano would always have a special place in the hearts and minds of Fez's family, and was like a member of their family. She had been publicly performing Fez's music since 1981, and performing one of his most evocative poems to an eager crowd of thousands so soon after his passing must have been a profound experience. As expected, however, the performance led to Bano being banned from mainstream television, radio, and concerts in Pakistan. She developed a strong cult following, though, and ended up performing in India a few times throughout the late 80s and 90s. However, the history behind this performance could have been very different if it was not for one very clever audio technician who made a split-second decision to put the microphones on record right before the Hum Dekhenge encore began. The full performance was never officially recorded, either on video or audio. As the story goes, the night after the performance, thousands of political activists had their homes raided and all recordings destroyed. However, the audio technician who recorded the encore supposedly handed the tapes to Shoaib Hashmi, who had them smuggled out of the country and quickly spread. The version that we have of the performance today comes directly from this. This banned recording falls into a long list of banned progressive media that can be traced as far back as the short story collection Angare, one of the first pieces of writing to be banned by the colonial British government in India, and which led to the creation of the Progressive Writers Association. Even today, with films like Joyland facing difficulties reaching audiences in the country, it is clear that the state has all the power to decide what media the masses can and cannot consume. In fact, the article on free speech in the Pakistani constitution is sweeping with the quote-unquote reasonable restrictions it poses, and can include anything that the state feels goes against the glory of Islam, public order, decency, or morality. That said, the recording itself shows an important tenet of progressive media, the element of communality. Not only was the spread of the recording something that could not have been achieved solely by an individual, even the recording itself is significant. To explain this, let's focus on this point, around 7 minutes into the track. If you listen carefully, you can make out that Iqbal Bano stops singing, the audience starts chanting Inqilab Zindabad or Long Live the Revolution. The musicians adapt their sound to accommodate the chants, and then once all is settled, Bano continues.
जब अर्ज़े खुदा के
Compare this to Western protest music. The most famous protest songs and their most famous recordings are cleanly recorded in studios with no interference. Music in the West generally has more of a focus on intellectual rights and individualism, and Western influence on global music trends means that protest music is beginning to lose the communal aspect that is so fundamental to it. Let's take another example. This famous Dalit protest song is being performed by activist Vilas Khogre. His was one of the many renditions of Kattha Sonore Logo. And each performance of each rendition is unique to the point that it is difficult to trace where the song originally started. Music in the subcontinent, especially protest music, is meant to have a communal element, and by incorporating the audience into the recording, Iqbal Bano's famous version of Hum Dekhenge keeps that legacy alive. In essence, the source material, the context behind it, and the recording that exists today all contribute to the famous legacy of Iqbal Bano's rendition of Hum Dekhenge. I personally feel that it is one of the most important cultural, musical, and political moments in the progressive history of Pakistan, and one that truly shows the power of the people in the face of oppression, censorship, and dictatorship. Over the years, many renditions of the song have come out, including the Coke Studio version, which is ironically censored, and a collaboration between Pakistani musician Ali Sethi and experimental electronic producer Nicholas Jar. Still, the 1986 performance by Iqbal Bano is a song that is greater than the song alone, and it will always have a timeless legacy of its own.